Okay, thank you, DJ. Well, I want to welcome everybody. Hello to September. This is our 2016 project of the month, and in this month, it's called Alphabet Animals Doodle Marker Case. That's kind of a mouthful, but the focus of this project, and I'm using my mouse to come over, we're going to be creating this little marker case. And the whole intent behind the marker case is that, of course, with back to school, this is a great little project. I grew up in the days where we had paper notebooks called Peachies, and we'd get new ones at the beginning of the school year, and then throughout the school year, we'd doodle on them. We'd doodle and we'd scribble and we'd write notes, and we'd put people's phone numbers, and we'd write our homework on there, and by the end of the year, that notebook would just be falling apart. And so I got the inspiration from that, and also from one of our other educators, and I'll kind of talk about that. But the whole objective behind this little case is a zippered case. It's made out of just a plain white fabric, and that you're going to use, I would make one and give it along with some of these Crayola Ultra Clean washable markers, or you can even get washable crayons. And you just doodle right onto the bag. You can draw on it. I've got one in the backdrop here to see. And you can doodle on it, and then when it's all covered with doodles, you just drop it into the washing machine, and all the markers wash off. I actually tested the different markers and the crayons on a piece of the white fabric, and I drew on them and then washed it to see what would happen, and amazingly enough, they all wash out. So that's kind of the impetus and the focus behind this month's project. So at a glance, the first thing that you want to do is, of course, be sure to download your September free design. So this project is focused on FTC U software, and I've had, as I go out and teach events, I have people that participate in the webinars that don't have the software, which is fine. You can do that. But I just want to remind you that the project is focused on the software. You do have to have the software in order to access that free design and the handout that goes along with this. So when you download your free designs, they go into a folder. I'm going to real quickly navigate to that to show you. But you're going to get a free design with this month's project. The free design comes from a wonderful Floriani collection called Alphabet Animals. And this is the letter that you get this month. It's the M for monkey. And then you get your free design, and you also get your project construction, and that's how to put the project together. I'm going to navigate to the next slide, and I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to demonstrate this real quickly because I want to make sure that everybody knows where to access the handout so that you can print it off. So right now I'm going to real quickly toggle over to my desktop. Okay, so you're going to access it from your desktop. I'm going to use Windows Explorer. I'm down here in the lower left-hand corner to come into Windows Explorer. I'm going to navigate using Windows Explorer to my computer C drive. So I've expanded my computer C drive. I'm going to go down. There's a folder under the C drive called Floriani. I'm going to expand that. Within that folder, I'm going to expand this folder called Designs. And then underneath that folder, this is where you find your free monthly designs and your free FTC U projects. This is where you're going to find your handouts. So you want to expand that folder. Okay, so they're all out in alphabetical order in a month, and this month is September. So go into September and select September 2016. Once you have that selected, then you're going to see that there are 2 PDF files this month. The first file, the Alphabet Animals, you're going to double click on that. It will open it up. This is your instructions for putting the project together. I'm going to minimize that real quickly because there's a second handout that I wanted to point out also. This is from the FTC U manual, and in this month's project, we are actually going to be digitizing. Now, not to put the fear into anybody, but that is one of the things you can do in your software. So this is the chapter from the manual. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I would recommend that maybe you print this off, but it talks about how to work with lines and shapes and artwork in your software. So this is a reference for you, and I've included that. All right. So with that being said, I'm navigating back over to my PowerPoint. Okay, so that's where the designs September 2016 is included. All right. Then, once you have downloaded and printed off that PDF file, you need to have, of course, your Floriani software. You need to have that free monthly design, and then the project handout has a detailed supply list. So on the right-hand side of my screen, these are the materials that you need to complete the project. So here's your Floriani material. You need your needles, Deco Magic, the R&K Precision Turning Tool, your threads, and I've been very specific with thread colors this time because we're going to digitize a piece of notebook paper, and so you'll need your black thread, you need teal blue, or you can substitute it with a different one, but the color that I used is 128, and then the pink, which is 371. You need Floriani Perfect Stick tearaway stabilizer. You need fabric prep, and I've kind of ventured this month also into one of our newer product lines, the Quilter Select product line. And the products that I used for this project came from that Quilter Select line. There are products that are similar to some in the Floriani, so I used Quilter Select fabric prep to make my fabric ready for embroidery and for the project. If you don't have that or have access to it, then you can substitute and you can use Floriani Dreamweave. Or you can even use Floriani Dreamweave Ultra. That Ultra is a little bit heavier, but you could use those. We're going to use 8.5 by 11 Quilter Select Apple Stick. And the 8.5 by 11 is important. You can use it on a roll and cut it to 8.5 by 11, but if you have some already, it makes the project much faster. If you don't have the Quilter Select, then by all means you can substitute Floriani Applique Wonder, the 8.5 by 11. I use the Quilter Select Glue Stick. I love this tool, and if you haven't picked one up yet, I do recommend it. They're great. But I use the Quilter Select Fabric Glue Stick. We do not have anything comparable in the Floriani line. And then the Quilter Select 6 by 12 ruler. And if you have not had the opportunity to experience this Quilter Select product, these rulers by Quilter Select, I love them. They have a grippy surface on there, and when you're cutting fabric, they work phenomenally. Some of your other items, white fabric, Crayola washable markers or crayons. You will need a 12-inch zipper. This is a zippered bag. And then the fabric for lining. They just fuse your Dreamweave fabric prep to the wrong side. All right, with that being said, I'm now ready to toggle over to my lesson. I'm going to go ahead right now and toggle over into my FTC U software, and I already have it open. And this is the project that we're going to be making. So I want to outline it ahead of time what we'll be working on in the software. Now, real quickly, I also want to mention that recently we came out with a new update to your FTC U software. I'm going to go into my Help menu. I'm going to come into About, and you'll see that the build that I'm working on is 3126. This is the newest release of the Floriani software. So if you haven't updated your software yet, you'll see features and tools in my software that you may not have at this time. And so once you perform your update, you will have those tools. I'll go ahead and say OK. Just real quickly, to get that update, if you click on your Help menu and you come in to check for updates, then that's going to take you directly to the page with the link to download that latest version of the FTC U software. And I found that that's the easiest way to get my updates, as I just check periodically. But when you open your software, there will be a little dialog box that pops up and says, there's a new update available. Do you want to download it? Now that I'm working in this new version of the software, when you reinstall the software or when you perform an update, when you install an update, it resets the preferences in your software. And I like to work, and I'm going to go in under my Tools menu, and I'm going to come down into Preferences. And this is one area where you will notice a difference when you install the newest update. So under the Environment tab here, you've got a View tab. Under the View tab, you'll now have this little dialog that says Show Crosshair in Input Mode. I'm leaving that deselected for the time being. I don't need to have that, but you might see that. You will also see this is where I've changed the highlight. I think the default when you install the software, the highlight color is usually a blue. And for some reason, I just prefer the magenta. I can see better. So I just come in and select, and you can choose any color to highlight. And what that means is when I use my sequence view to select or my select tool, it's going to highlight in that color so I can see what's selected. Under the digitizing, this is also something that's new in this latest update. We will get in and do some basic digitizing in some future lessons. But the last tool that we're going to make changes to is this preferences. So under the preferences, make sure that you're working in inches. So see that I'm in inches, and if you're not, you can right click and go from metric to imperial. Okay, I'm back in my grid settings, and I like to put my horizontal grid at 0.25, my vertical grid at 0.25, and under my grid major at 4 and 4. And in this lesson, let me show you why I'm asking you to do that ahead of time. I'm going to go ahead and turn my grid on at this time. And what that does is it sets up an environment for you. And when I am designing in my software, and we're designing this right here, and this is going to represent a piece of notebook paper. When I'm designing, I like to put that grid in the backdrop. The way that I have those preferences set up, what happens is that on the darker purple lines represent a 1-inch square, and then the sublines within that are 1/4 inch. So I've got a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, and 3/4 of an inch. And so as I'm going through and designing this, it just gives me a real good reference in the background. And then of course, I do periodically use the ability to show your grid and turn your grid off and on. So that's just a right click. So we'll point that out ahead of time. Those are some of the features that we will be using in this month's lesson. Now, the next thing is I want to real briefly give you an overview of what we'll be creating in the software. Number one, in the software, we're going to use our artwork tools, and we're going to create a box around the outside. This is our notebook paper, and it's going to measure 8.5 by 11 inches. So that's the first thing that we'll create. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to digitize just some straight lines. I'm starting off very, very simple. So we're going to digitize these straight lines. So we're going to go from top to bottom right here. And then we're going to come back in here and we're going to create these lines going horizontally across there to represent the lines of a piece of newspaper. I mean, not newspaper, but notebook paper. Once we've got that done, then we will use our menu over here to bring in our monkey design. The monkey design by default comes as colors. We're going to convert it to black and white because it's going to represent a coloring book page. Remember, the whole objective behind this little project is, number one, to look at some strategies for digitizing, and number two, we're going to be using some different software features in there to kind of enhance that. So we'll use our color sort tool. So that's a roadmap of what we're going to be doing. I'm going to go ahead right now and I'm going to open up a new piece of paper. And the first thing that we're going to do is, as I said, we're going to digitize. Now, if you want to learn more about digitizing, you can, but when you digitize, one of the things that they recommend is you start with artwork. And so artwork comes in two formats. You can start with a raster file, which is your photographs, your JPEG images. You would bring those in as a backdrop, which is this tool here. We will not do that this month. We're going to save that for a lesson in the future. What we're going to be doing this month, though, is we're going to be using this tool right here, which is your line input tool, and it inputs artwork. And next to that tool is a black drop-down arrow. And when you click on that, that tool actually has three different modes of input. So the first one is a straight line. The second one is what's called a pen tool. And so when you select that, you can just freehand draw just like with a pen. And the third one is the Bezier tool. So the one that we'll be using today is the straight line tool. This inputs lines. Now, we've got lines and we've got shapes. How do I input an artwork shape? That we're going to come over, and that's this tool right here. And when you select that tool and you come down underneath there, these are the various shapes. So if we wanted to do a square or a rectangle, we'd input this one: circle, triangle, octagon, pentagon, hexagon, and then, of course, make sure that you click on the custom shapes, because as you come down into custom shapes, these are artwork shapes that come with your software, and I see some new shapes in there this time with this update. And then there's also a drop down under there to come into this menu with Easy Art. So you've got a lot of different options for creating artwork in your software. One of the advantages to Floriani Total Control U software that I love is that the artwork tools are embedded into the software. So I can create artwork in here. I can create vector shapes, but I don't have to learn a separate software program. I don't have to go out and learn CorelDRAW. I don't have to learn Adobe Illustrator to create vector artwork. I have the ability to create that right from within your FTC U software. Let's go ahead and we're going to input a rectangle. So I'm going to select my custom shape square. I'm going to come down, I'm going to click and drag. I'm not going to be concerned with the exact size at this point in time because I'm going to, once I bring in my rectangle, I'm going to, while it is still selected, navigate under the Properties panel to the Transform tab, and I'm going to input my exact dimensions in this tab. And so the dimensions, the width is going to be 8.5 inches. I'm creating a piece of notebook paper, so I'm making this 8.5, and my height is going to be 11. Now, I have to say here also, if you are working on a smaller embroidery machine, you are constrained by the size of your largest hoop on your embroidery machine. So if you have one of those machines that doesn't maybe have this larger size, I would recommend at this point, go out, measure your largest hoop, and then use that as your dimensions for your project. So maybe yours won't be 8.5 by 11. Maybe yours will be 6 by 8 or something, but that's how you can come up with that. So once I've got my dimensions in there, make sure that you have this selected, the maintain deselected, and I'm just going to click on apply. Now that is now 8.5 by 11, and this is going to be my guide for what I'm going to put everything else on top of. Now I'm going to go in, I'm going to turn on my grid, and I'm going to line my grid up, and I'm just using the hand tool. I'm going to line my grid up right directly on the line. And I'm going to zoom in with my magnifying glass real quickly here. And while that is still selected, I'm going to hold down my control key on my keyboard, and I'm using the arrow key to gently nudge that design. Let me go back and reselect it. And I'm just nudging it. Come on. Let me go back here. Okay, so control with my arrow key, and I'm going to nudge it until that little box is directly on top. I'm going to navigate up to see the top of this, and I'm using the top arrow. And I'm going to get it right as close onto the line as I possibly can. Now I'm going to zoom back out to fit. So going back over to our original project, we've already created this. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create this vertical line from top to bottom. And I'm going to put it, this is where that grid environment in the backdrop helps me to design my project. I'm going to use that, I'm going to move over 1 inch, which because I've got my grid set at 1 inch, I'm going to come in with my line tool. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to drag all the way to the bottom, and in the new software update, I love this feature, thank you DJ, you'll notice that as I input that, I now have a pop-up that tells me the link that I'm inputting in there, and so I can use that once I hit 11 inches right here. And that's a little bit big, so I'll right-click to finish it, and then I'll just come back into my Transform tab and look at that. I got it right at 11 inches. That's perfect. I'm going to zoom in on there. I want to make sure right now that that line is butted up, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. And when you're designing, it's very important that you learn to use the tools, for instance, your magnifying glass here to zoom in, and if you'll notice of what the other tool that I use quite regularly is my zoom tool, and I'll zoom to selection, I'll zoom to fit in there. So you want to make sure that as you're learning to navigate in the software and you're doing this designing, those tools will help you in the designing process. I also always use a mouse when I'm working in the software. And that is because with my mouse, I have the ability to use the scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom in and zoom out. And I do software training, and I always tell people when they come to the software training, the FTCU software galas, bring a mouse. The mouse will enhance your abilities to work in the software. All right, I'm going to turn off my grid. So I've got this line right here. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to digitize a straight line across the top of the page. I'm going to go ahead and bring my grid back on. Notice I'm turning it off and on. I'm going to once again grab this line tool. I'm going to come over and I'm going to, and I may have to resize this in just a minute, but I'm going to click. There's my little top up, and this one needs to be 8.5 inches because my paper width was 8.5 by 11. So I'm coming back to 8.5 right there. Left click, right click to finish that. Let me turn off my grid because I don't think I've got that anywhere close to where it needs to be. No, I do not. All right, there we go. Turn that grid back on. Okay, so now I've got that first line. Now, there's a couple of different thought processes, and I want you to think about this in how you go about digitizing the rest of your lines. So I could manually input each of these lines, and as you do this, you really need to think about the order that you're putting them in, because the order that you create your artwork determines the order over here in your sequence view, which also determines the order that it's going to stitch out in. Now, I can change the order after the fact, but that requires more work. So if I just give it a little time, if I think about this ahead of time, and I do a little analysis and analytical thinking about, well, how is this going to stitch out? Well, I want it to start stitching here, and then I want it to come here and here. I want it to be very logical from top to bottom. And if I think about that as I am inputting my artwork, it will pay off in the long run when I turn this into stitches. So I want you to think about that also. So we're going to go back, and we could either manually come in and digitize these, or this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my first artwork line that I created, and I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to right-click, and I can right-click directly on it, or I can use my sequence view window, and I'm going to right-click to copy it, and then I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to paste it. And it pastes directly over the top. Now I'm going to slide it down. Okay? Now I'm going to right-click, I'm going to paste another one, and I'm going to slide it down. So I've got 3 individual artwork lines here. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to use my alignment tools to just do a real quick left align. Now with those 3 selected, watch what happens. I'm going to right-click and copy. I'm going to right-click and paste. And I'm going to drag this down. And guess what? I've got 3. And I'm going to right-click and I'm going to paste it again. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to right-click and paste again, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And I think I'm at the bottom of my page. Let me turn off my grid to see there. Oh, I am. Good. Okay. All right. So a couple of different options. I could have manually gone in and done that, or I just like to utilize the ability to copy and paste all of those at the same time. All right. So once I've got those in there, I'm going to, once again, I'm going to align those. Okay, so I'm just aligning the lines that I put in. I'm going to zoom in, and notice that I've got a little bit of a gap here. They're still selected, and once I go back to those control tools, to that control and nudge, and I can do all of these at the same time. Nudge, 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 nudge. Look at there. Every one of them at the same time. And I don't know if you caught what I just did, but I had my magnifying glass selected to zoom in. And when I was trying to nudge, you've got to go back and you've got to reselect that select tool. You're telling your computer that you're back on there. And if you, when you download your newest update, go to the website and download the handout that comes with it, because it has two or three pages of keyboard shortcuts. And for those of you that digitize and are notice I don't use computer shortcuts. That just was not, that's not how I process things. But I know a lot of you like that. And so we've got a printout where you can download and print out all the keyboard shortcuts. And I know a lot of you like to use those. And so you can use keyboard shortcuts in this process instead of coming back and manually clicking on those tools. Okay, now I've got this done. This is artwork right now. And I'm going to change some colors. And the first one is at this Poly Deep Ocean. I'm good with that one. But the second one right here, if you look at a sheet of notebook paper, on a sheet of notebook paper, this ruler line is always a pink. And the pink that we're going to use is 128. So while I've got that selected, I come down to my lower left-hand corner and I click on the magnifying thread search color tool. And I've given you specific colors to use, and the pink that we're going to use is 128. I type in 128 and I click on Find. And then it automatically navigates to that color and it selects it for you. There's a box around that color. I'm going to left click and bring that in. So now that is color 128 Scorching Pink. That leaves me my lines, and those are going to be 371 blue. So I'm going to type in 371 and I'm going to click on Find. It takes me directly to that 371 Tahoe blue, and I'm going to update that. So I like to update my colors. This is the colors that I'm going to stitch it out in when I'm done. And if you update the color of the artwork, when we use our auto convert tools, and we convert this to a stitch, which is our next step, what you're going to find is that you're not going to have to go back down and change the thread color. It's already updated for you. So that's one of the reasons why I like to do that. I right click and collapse all. Okay, we're doing well. Let's make sure everything's selected. Now with artwork, you have the ability when you create artwork or when you import artwork to your software, you can use these tools down here. They're called auto stitch tools. I'm not going to call them auto digitizing because they don't digitize, but they're auto stitch. And what these tools do is that when you bring in artwork, they will, depending on what you choose down here, convert the artwork to a stitch. We're going to make these all running stitches. You have, starting off here, these are your running stitches, these are your satin stitches, and these are your fill stitches in here. And depending on what you selected, it would, for instance, here's a fill stitch. There you go, it's a fill, just like that. Let me undo. And we're going to turn everything that's here into just a plain running stitch. So let's go ahead and select that. You have now digitized. Guess what, people? You are a digitizer. You can do this. There we go. When I am digitizing in the software, when I create something or when I do anything, the next tool that I always use is I'm going to use my slow redraw tool. This is my scrub tool right here, the scrub bar, and this is the simulate sewing. I call them slow redraw. And I watch the way this stitches out. This will give you a wealth of information. And when you are working in the software to create your own embroidery stitches, this is important. You really want to watch how it stitches out to simulate that sewing process in there. So I'll just go ahead and speed that up so that you can see that. I'm going to use one feature right here. I'm going to select these right here, and I'm going to use this tool called Optimize Entry Exit. Whenever I'm digitizing, I like to use this tool. What it does is it analyzes this object, and it's going to do just what it says. It's going to optimize where it enters and where it exits. And so I like to always make sure that I use that tool. And if you came in and did the slow redraw, you would actually find that it alters the way that this stitches out. Okay. All right, we're good. We've got our notebook paper. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do, and I've got to, let me leave that out of the way, is we're going to come over to our library panel. We're going to navigate into our free FTC U projects. We're going to find the September 2016 folder. Select that, come over to your design panel, navigate and locate. This is the finished design, so if you don't want to make this project, that's fine. Here's the one that I made. But of course, I know you want to make your own. So here's your free design for the month. We're going to select that. We're going to drag it we're going to drop it over here in the page. And so just go ahead and you have to think in terms of when I created my bag, this is the whole bag. I put the zipper here and it folded in half. So as I was creating this project, and I might even do this, I might come down and draw me, and I'm just dragging. This is an invisible line. It's called a guideline. And I might just drop a guideline in there to help me visually know that, okay, I want to keep everything above that, because if I don't, it's going to fold under to the bottom of the bag. So this is another tool that's available for you within your software. Okay, so we brought this monkey in. And the monkey currently is in 4 different colors. We're making black and white. We're making a coloring book page. So we're going to take this design and we're going to turn it into black and white. But before we do that, we're going to make some changes, because currently, if I were to just select that design right here and go, oh, okay, let me come down here and click on my black thread. Okay. What's going to happen is it doesn't change the order that it stitches out. So originally, I'm going to undo. The green stitches out last, but the first thing that stitches out is the face. Now, I made this project a couple of times, so I'm speaking to you from experience. And when the first time that I made the project, all I did was select it and go, oh, okay, I'm going to turn it into black. And when I got to my machine to stitch it out, the first thing that stitched out was the black little face. The second thing that stitched out was the black little feet. The third thing was the black body. And the last thing was the ears and the branch that he's hanging off of. Now, in a logical world, when I'm stitching this, I want it to start stitching at the top and go from top to bottom or left to right. So I thought, how can I combat this? And what I discovered was, if you change the order of how this stitches out, and that's just a simple matter of dragging and moving it up here. So I want this to stitch out first. I want the branches to stitch out first. And then the next thing that I want to stitch out, I believe this is his hands, and then his body. Okay, so what I did is, before I convert this all to black and white, I went ahead and put it in the logical order of how it's going to stitch out. Then I selected those items. Now we'll select it, and this is in the handout. It's very detailed in the handout, and it tells you the exact order to put them in. Now, once I've got those in the order, now I'm going to come down and just go, you know what, let's make those all black. There you go. Now let me zoom in a little bit. Let me select that, and we're going to zoom in on him so that we can see. And it's jumping all over the place. These are your jump stitches. And I don't really like that. And I could go in and I could change all of those little individual start and stop points. But the tool that we used previously, this optimize entry and exit, what I discovered is that when I used that, it optimized those in there and eliminated a lot of those jump stitches for me. So I'm going to turn it on 3D so that you can see. It wasn't as clean as maybe something that was commercially, professionally digitized, but it was clean enough for me so that when I stitched it out, it was logical. I didn't have really too crazy of jump stitches. I did have to go in and I had to snip the little threads between, like, for instance, his ears and his eyes, but you would have to do that anyway. I also discovered this, the stitch length. The way this was digitized, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop the stitch length down to 2 millimeters and update that. And what I discovered is that by doing that, and I'll just do a quick undo in here and a redo, when I dropped the stitch length, do you see his little, for instance, this toe right here? By decreasing the stitch length in there, the toes went from being pointed to being more rounded in there. And so when we're going to work with text next, and the same principle applies. This is actually a principle that comes from micro-stippling and quilting. When you micro-stipple in quilting, you drop your stitch length because you get more rounded corners. If you leave your stitch length longer, then you get jagged corners, and the whole point is to have curves in there. The same principle applies here. By decreasing your stitch length in there, you get better definition and more rounded corners in there. Just something that you can kind of put in your bag of tricks. All right, so we've got this ready to go. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add some text. I'm going to go back to my original design to show you that. And please feel free, you know, the beauty of creating this project is that you can make it however you want. If I were making this for someone specific, I would definitely add their name. And if it were, you know, I wouldn't put my in there. I'd probably add, you know, Christian's markers or Kathy's markers or something. But this is a generic bag, and I've kind of got into the alliteration. So I'm working with M for markers and monkey, and I thought, oh my gosh, my markers. So I stuck with my markers. Okay, we're going to add text. We're going to left click on our text tool, and we're going to drop down. And we're going to select that first text option and come in and select a placeholder. Now, you will notice something different when you perform your update. And let me go ahead and type in markers here and click apply. Okay. And I love this feature. This is another thank you, DJ. I love this. When I come down and click on my text now, I've got these bright characters in front of the text that actually tell you features about that particular text. So for instance, I think this is, I'd have to go back, this stands for applique. I think this is micro thread. The 60 in front of them is a font that's intended to be stitched out with micro thread. I think BL is, oh, don't quote me on this one, DJ, I'm not sure. But the one that I love, and we're going to work with these specifically, is that the fonts that have a red O in front of those. And that's been there for a while. That O stands for options. And so as you work through this project, make sure, although we have lots and lots of fonts for you to choose from, make sure that you are using the fonts that are designated with that circle O. And there's a reason for that. This is one of the best things I love about our fonts in the software. Any of those fonts that have the O, the option, when I come in under the style, the default right here, it allows me with one click to convert this from a satin stitch to a run stitch. So I come in, I say, okay, let's make that a run stitch and apply. Now this is a run stitch in there. I love that feature. I'm going to rotate this a little bit. I'm going to move it over to the side. I might make it a little bit smaller in size. And then if you remember what I previously mentioned, and I'm going to zoom in on this markers so that you can really see what I'm talking about. I'm going to come over to the Run tab while that's selected, and I'm going to decrease the stitch length from 3 millimeters to 2 millimeters in length and click on Apply. Okay? Look at the S down there. I'm going to undo. Do you see that S currently? And now I'm going to redo. And do you see how much smoother those lines are? So as you go through and you add your text in here, as you add those different text options, keep that in mind, that as you resize it, if you just real quickly go in and drop that stitch length in there, you get a much cleaner definition. I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it over here on the side because that saves me typing time. I'm going to real quickly come in. I'm going to choose a different font. I used Dill Pickle that time. Let's try this George and a run stitch. That's a little big. Let me drop it to 2 millimeters. And I'm just going to resize that to fit in there a little bit better. And I'm going to rotate that around. And the other thing is that when you convert this text to a run stitch, when you start resizing it, you don't have to worry about stitch density or anything like that. If this were a satin stitch, if this were a font that I left as a satin stitch, when I started resizing it, I'm going to have to start worrying about, well, am I going to have puckering? Am I making the satin stitch too wide so that it's going to catch loops in there? It's going to be hard on my machine. So the nice thing about converting that to that run stitch is that you don't have to worry about that as you resize these. So we've resized that. The next thing we need to do is we're going to add my or a name or something like that. And so you would go ahead and add your my in here. Select your fonts. let's not do that one. Don't know why I picked it. I'm going to go back up to the top because I love this all curled up. It is actually one of my favorite fonts. And I'm going to put the My in there, drag it down over the top. You could get really inventive with this if you wanted to be really crazy. For instance, I might want to, move this over here, maybe make it a little bit bigger. I mean, this is where you have the ability to really play with the different features in your software. I do want to make sure that I put that into a 2 millimeter, and then I would add my last My over here on the side. So once you've got that all done, here's my finished design. Now I'm ready to save that to my machine. I do want to mention this feature also. The other thing that you'll really see a difference with this in this update, and please make sure you watch the video, is the Save to Sew. So with the Save to Sew, one of the first things that you do is you select the fabric that you're putting this on. So for instance, this is on quilter's cotton. I'm going to go ahead and select quilting in here, and I did digitize that. So back into my quilting, I digitized this. What do you want to do? Do you want to create new style settings in there, new density based on the fabric in there? I'm going to go next in here. And this is something where you will really see a difference. It's going to tell you exactly with pictures how to best stabilize your fabrics to get your better results. I love this feature in here. When you are connected to the internet, you can click on this video. It will pop up, and it's a wonderful video that shows you and demonstrates how to use that product. Right here is the actual product information. So Floriani Stitch and Wash Fusible, you'd adhere that to the fabric first. You would then go ahead and hoop your item and then add your topping on the top there. So you will see some nice enhancements to our Save to Sew features in there. And then you would finish with that and save that out for your machine. Okay, and that is the end of this month's software project. So now you are a master digitizer, not a master digitizer, but that is digitizing in a snap. So one of the takeaways to remember with digitizing, though, is that you always want to start with some kind of an artwork. So if it's not a drawing that you've sketched out, or a picture that you've taken, you're going to start with artwork within the software. If you want to learn more about digitizing, I will confess to you, I never claimed to be a digitizing pro. I can show things in the software, but when it comes to the art of digitizing, you want to learn from a pro. And I highly recommend these are available through your Floriani dealer. These are the FTC U workshops. These are done by Trevor Conquergood. He is phenomenal, and he walks you through the whole process to teach you how to become a master digitizer. And if you really want to learn to digitize and you want to do this like a pro, then how are you going to learn this? This is the best way to do that. So I would recommend those. Now we're ready to put the project together. I already mentioned earlier, you want to prepare the fabric before you embroider it. And in this project, I used Quilter's Select Fabric Prep. This is a fusible. You're just going to fuse it to the wrong side of your fabric, and it was white fabric, so it didn't really even have a wrong side. You can use Dreamweave, or you could even use Dreamweave Ultra for this product. These products they increase the thread count of the fabric, and I really feel like taking the time to add a fabric prep to my fabric before I embroidered it was one thing that I would never go back and change. It's the one takeaway. If I'm going to invest the time to embroider something, then I'm going to invest the time in preparing the fabric ahead of time so that I get the best results. And that's done with Quilter Select Fabric Prep, which is a lighter weight, or Dreamweave, or the Dreamweave Ultra. I used Floriani Perfect Stick in my hoop. I went ahead and put the Perfect Stick in the hoop. I scored it. I removed the paper to expose the tacky surface in there. And I use a T-pin or a stiletto to score that. And then I always tell people this: remove all of the paper. I've seen people before, and they'll come in and they'll just remove a little section of the paper. And realistically, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot reuse this when you get done. use the smallest hoop that you can, but when you're using your stabilizers, your adhesive stabilizers, remove all of that so that you have the maximum space to adhere your fabric to. You're going to embroider the design, and I did this. I took the grid from my hoop and I laid it onto my fabric, and I actually used that as a template for cutting my fabric. And so I just cut around the perimeter of the fabric here, not with my template. I actually used a marker and I marked around the outside, and then I cut it, because if you use your rotary cutter, you can cut through your expensive plastic grids there. But I cut the fabric and it laid perfectly into the hoop, and it was really kind of a nice thing. So I'd never thought of it before, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to share that with everybody, but cut it to size. Then when you get ready to do your project construction, it's actually constructed in two parts. So you construct the outside of the bag, and then you're going to construct the inside of the bag, and then you'll put them together. And I tried to keep the project really simple. If the project is intensive, I try to keep the software portion simple. If the software portion is more intense, which this month we were digitizing, that was a little more in depth, and so I keep the project simple. For the outside of the bag, once you've embroidered your design, then trim your main fabric. And I'm pointing out here, once you trim it, this is my stitch line. This is the actual embroidery, and this is my Quilter Select ruler. And you'll see that it's light yellow, so that it really allows me to see underneath the ruler where I'm cutting. And I left a 1/2 inch seam allowance, 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then you're going to cut a piece of Deco Magic, and you want your outside fabric is 9.5 by 11. Cut a piece of Deco Magic Light, and we're going to cut that the actual size of the project. So that's 8.5 by 11, notebook size piece of paper, or notice your finished size. Take your Deco Magic and go ahead and fuse that right onto the outside of the fabric. And if you cut it right, remember that this embroidery design was 8.5 by 11, this outside. So my Deco Magic just lays right on the top of there, and then this is my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I cut the Deco Magic to the inside so that I wouldn't have as much bulk in the side seams. And this seemed to work really well for this project. Okay, now I'm going to get my lining ready. And the lining, it's a very simple lining. I took a sheet of my Quilter Select Apple Stick that's 8.5 by 11. Now, if you're using Floriani Applique Wonder 8.5 by 11, same principle, or you can just, cut a sheet of Applique Wonder or Apple Stick for your lining. But I cut it, I fused that directly to the lining fabric, okay? And I like to flip my fabric over, so this is the fabric side, and this is where I really, really press, and I actually do like to use a little steam to get that adhesive stuck on there. Trim it to 8.5 by 11. And when I trimmed it, the paper's 8.5 by 11, so I trimmed the outside to 8.5 inches. I just this is the lining. It's going to go on the inside of the bag, so you're not even going to see it. So I trimmed that in 8.5, and then I left a 1/2 inch on top because I put a zipper on the top, and that gave me a nicer finished edge on the top of the bag. So once you've got your lining prepared, peel the paper off and fuse your lining on top of the Deco Magic. So the lining's not going to be loose. The lining actually becomes a part of the bag. And that's what I think makes this project so simple, is that the lining is fused directly onto the bag. Then it's really simple. Add your zipper to the top of the bag. Let me go back. I did jump ahead here. Add your zipper to the top of the bag. Sew the side seam, and then turn it right side out. And the project is done. That's how simple it is. The longest part of this project is actually the digitizing and embroidering the main design. This is a real quick project. And as I put it together, I thought, boy, this would be a great little project for people to make. I was just thinking nephews, nieces, grandkids, for the holidays coming up, for, maybe stocking stuffers or Christmas presents or things like that. So they're great little, this is a great project that you can create. And, you know, for people that are traveling in a car, traveling on a plane, put the bag together, put the markers in there, maybe with a snack or something, and then put it in your bag so that when your kids get, you know, antsy in the plane, pull it out and let them go to town coloring on the marker bag. Okay, so here's some construction tips. When you do the zipper, this is where I love my Quilter Select glue stick. I try not to pin anymore. What I found is when you pin, just the nature of pinning, it puckers the fabric. So I use my Quilter Select glue stick, and I just ran a bead of the Quilter Select glue stick along the top where I'm going to put the zipper. And then I lay my zipper down and stitch it in place. And I love the Quilter Select glue stick because you'll see that it goes on yellow. If you see right here where my cursor is moving across the page, the wonderful thing about this glue stick is it goes on yellow and it dries clear, and there's nothing left. You can't even tell it's there. But I love the Quilter Select glue stick because it holds the fabric in place while you're stitching, and there are no pins required. This is just another little tip if you've ever made a bag with a zipper. Okay, so this is the inside of my bag, this is the outside of my bag, excuse me, this is the outside, this is the inside. I've stitched it together. I'm getting ready to do the side seams. Before you sew the side seams, open the zipper, because once you sew those side seams, there's no way you can get the zipper open. You end up reopening the side seams. So open the zipper before you do the side seams. And then once you're done, okay, you're going to turn it right side out, looking a little compressed. How did I get it smoothed out? I used my Floriani Precision Turning Tool. And if you don't have one of these yet, get to your dealer, and if they don't have one in stock, have them order one for you. You will love this tool. What makes it unique? Number one, it's made of metal. So guess what, people? It doesn't break. And when I was turning this bag right side out, I use a technique where I take my turning tool and I stick it on my hip bone or on a table so that I can really get pressure on it. Two things that'll happen. Your turning tool will either break or it has a point on it and it goes through the corner of your fabric. Where the Precision Turning Tool has a ball point on the tip. So it really allows you to get clean and precise corners. The third thing about this tool that makes it totally unique that I love is that it has flat sides. And when you lay this tool down on your sewing table next to your machine, it does not roll off onto the floor. And I hate round tools because I've got a round stiletto, and every time I use it, it drops to the floor and I have to pick it up. And this is time. This is time that we want to maximize our sewing with. So once I get my bag all done, it's ready to go. So once again, I'll remind you, I don't know if any of you are on Instagram or Twitter, but we have a real, we are now Floriani Embroidery on Instagram. I really encourage you to sign up and follow us on Instagram. The people that are doing that, they've got great ideas and fun things on there. I love it. I am on Instagram. My handle is @KCFarrell. If you're looking for Floriani Embroidery, it will be @Floriani Embroidery. Remember that we have a Facebook presence, Floriani Embroidery. And I was telling people this, if you're not on that, every Friday they give away a free design. So if you're not on there, you're not getting your free design. So make sure that you're on there. If you do a project, you might label it. These are hashtags and they make it easy to find. So this month's project, Alphabet Animals, or September project, or just plain old Floriani Embroidery. So make sure that if you put this project together, or for those dealers out there that are working on this with your customers, take pictures and post it up there. I would love to see what people are doing. Next month, just a little heads up, we're going to be embroidering on a t-shirt. And I specifically went ahead and made a t-shirt project because I have a lot of people as I go out and do workshops in stores, stabilizer workshops, asking about, well, what do I need to do to embroider on a t-shirt? So in next month's project, we're going to be doing embroidery, and once again, we're going to be cutting vinyl to adhere onto those projects. So with that being said, if you have any questions, please be sure to email me at kathyf@rnkdistributing.com. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And DJ, if you're there, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, Kathy, thank you very much. It was a great webinar and learned a lot. And we look forward to seeing everyone next time. And until then, we'll see you later.